Welcome to the second episode of Old Games, Old Chiptooth Gaming's bi-weekly gaming retrospective podcast. You can get the show on YouTube and the podcast service of your choice, including Spotify, which I was very surprised and happy to see. My name is Noah Friscop, and across from me, the San Francisco treat, Eli Shaw. How has the little break treated you, sir? I can't speak already.
It's been pretty good. I did a little vacationing, played some video games, been playing a lot of Apex, but that game's too new to be talking about here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, it needs to simmer a little bit more time in the crock pot, as it were.
Oh yeah.
All right, so I just want to get right up into it. So let's just go.
Brutal Legend is Double Fine's 2009 heavy metal action adventures strategy hybrid. Published by EA and directed by legendary game creator Tim Schafer, this game gathered many big names in the metal community to lend their voices and got Jack Black to star as the game's hero. Brutal Legend sits at an 82-83 score on Metacritic and boasts one of the heaviest soundtracks in video games to date.
It has that Double Fine kind of weirdness to it, but it also manages to bite off way more than it can end up chewing. I know it was like a really expensive development cost, if I'm not mistaken, even like for the time. Like, just it kind of went through a lot of phases and some issues along the road, but like, what do you think of the final product? What's your main takeaway?
So I think of the final product, I before this I had never played a Double Fine game or like a Tim Schafer like classic adventure game, so I didn't really have any like expectations going into it. I think all I had learned before playing it was stars Jack Black. It's about like, I don't know, your weapons are a guitar and like an axe and stuff, and I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. And so I was like, yeah, let me give it a try. And let me tell you, this game does a lot. It's very ambitious.
It's incredibly ambitious. I don't know how they did it.
I don't know how they did it, and did it pretty well. It's not perfect in a lot of senses, but like, I think for like for its time and for how ambitious it was before other games kind of tried to copy it, I think it did pretty well. And the fact that they got so much talent to work on this game, I think might have been the reason why their budget was pretty high and maybe caused some production troubles. But I think it was worth it in the end to kind of go through with Tim Schafer's vision, I feel like.
Yeah, you can see the love at like every point in this game. Like, even from the first get-go, like it looks like a heavy metal album cover come to life, and it's beautiful. And the whole intro sequence where it's in live action and then it cuts to the main menu is like, it probably should have done that, had like a more traditional one after that, because like you go through it and then like all the animations are really slow. Like, I just want to change my graphics options. I don't want to flip through this again. But it has a charm to it right off the bat. Yeah, I don't think there's anyone better you could possibly have cast other than Jack Black. Like, he's just perfect for this role specifically. Like, even though the main character is obviously based off of him, like, it just feels so right. You know, with his whole career and Tenacious D and School of Rock and all that.
Oh yeah, no, I was a huge fan of School of Rock, of course, one of the best movies ever made. I think by that point I might have seen Tenacious D, like the movie. Maybe heard like a few songs here and there. But yeah, as soon as that little menu intro kicks in and he's like walking you through the record store, and he's like, oh, I have this secret record, like no one knows about it, blah blah blah, it'll send you to a different world. I was like, oh shit, dude, I am in. Like, this is what video games need to be. Like,
just double down, just know what you are and double down.
Like, really, just go all batshit crazy. If that's your game, just do it. Yep,
don't be afraid. And it's not afraid. At any point, this game is not afraid of what it is.
Oh, no.
And that's kind of Double Fine's, like, they're very confident games. They have a very unique premise, and then they just go all in on that premise. Like, I have a little bit of experience with them, like with Psychonauts, but this was probably the game that I always wanted to play the most out of their catalog that I had never gotten around to until now. And yeah, like, it starts out, it's like, all right, it's it's like a third-person action game, and you go through that. It's pretty, and then it's like a semi-open world. Would you say it's like it's got like vehicles and like you're traveling around these different locations, but it's not like huge or anything.
I mean, it's an open world game for the most part, and it is a PS3 360 game, so it's like as open world as you expect games from that generation to be. I mean, I guess it doesn't really fit. It's not as like live and I don't know, interactive as like GTA 5, but
Yeah.
I mean, this game came out way before that, and that I don't think it was really planning on being like this open world sim game. It's just like, hey, you know, there's the story and you can follow the story and you know, do your missions and everything, but like you can also build up your abilities. Like I think there are some like leveling things in it.
Yeah, there's some progression systems at play for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and like they want you to explore and just drive around in your car, listening to some good music, and
It's great.
you find these statues around that unlock more songs. And just like, hey, yeah, drive around, find more songs, fight some people if you see them, and you know, like that's your open world stuff. And it was pretty fun, even though it was like it was just driving around and fighting like random enemies that would spawn wherever.
Yeah, and I'm generally not a fan of collectibles, but when your collectibles are songs in a really quite large library of music, like that's gonna motivate me to collect that stuff. It's actually not useful, but it's for this game that feels right. Like that was a great decision on their part.
Exactly. Like I didn't even think about it as collectibles, but now that you say that, it was like you are going out of your way to find these things and just get a song. Like, and I think there might have been a trophy attached to it.
I'm sure. Yeah.
PlayStation people, but like I never really thought about it as a collectible because it was like, oh yeah, I do want to see what other songs are on this soundtrack because like everything else has been so good and like fits with the world so well. Like, of course, I'd want more songs to cycle through in my little car, like MP3 player, whatever it was.
Yeah, and the combat system, like it's pretty, you know, it's basic, but it gets the job done, and just the fact that it feels different in the sense that you're using like one of your weapons is a like all your primary like spell abilities are from your guitar, and you're playing like different riffs to activate them. Like that's if it's a fairly tried and true formula, but just the level, like the paint job on the outside, it makes it feel unique to the point where it's like it feels pretty. Yeah, it stands on its own. Like I can't really think of a game that uses its like this kind of setting or anything, and like this kind of like it's doubling down on heavy metal culture. Like I can't really think of anything like that.
Yeah, no, there's nothing else that really gets into it this deep. Maybe like I don't know, Guitar Hero.
Yeah, with like the story modes and those. Yeah, that's a good call. That's a good call. But like action games, like it seems like a prime. It seems like a prime setting for an action game, but the fact that it took that long and someone that passionate in Tim Schafer, like he's obviously like such a huge fan of music, and it shows. But yeah, I just wonder how it took this long to get made because it seems so obvious now that we see it.
Yeah, it took a long time, and I think maybe it took a while for video games to kind of get into that space where like you could approach Jack Black, you could approach Ozzy Osbourne and be like, hey, do you want to be a voice in this video game? And blah, blah, blah. I'm Tim Schafer. I've done this, this, and this. Like, I love this culture. Like, I'm a part of it. Like, would you like to be part of this little project? And I think it really took a while for games to mature and then get to the point where, oh, yeah, this game could be kind of mature, but also, like, just wild shit, like stuff that a teenager would like. And I was a teenager when I played this, and it was perfect.
Yeah, it's got that right level of like teenage edge to it. Like not over the top, not quite like a little bit of Hot Topic in there, but generally it's pretty consistent. I would love to be a fly on the wall in that meeting with I assume Tim and Ozzy and probably like Rob too and Lemmy too. Like what did that conversation look like? Especially Lemmy's like what why? I guess Dio was originally part of the cast too, and then something with Ozzy and they have beef or something, and then it's Tim Curry. So it's like this cast is so good. You got Jennifer Hale, of course, she's always fantastic. Quite an incredible cast list.
Yeah, reading through like the cast list just on like getting prepared for this show, I'm like, wow, these people are really like these are legendary people, and the voice actors that aren't like rock like metal people like are also pretty well-known voice actors if you like pay attention. Like, I mean, Tim Curry's just a well-known actor in general, and the fact that he was such a main character in this, I mean, he really nailed the performance too.
Oh yeah, he's great. Just from like the few, I haven't finished it, but just like the few clips I've heard, like he's so good. And like Kyle Gass is in there too for a little bit. Like,
oh yeah,
yeah, which you have to. He's fantastic. He's underrated as an artist, I will say.
Agreed.
But yeah, I was like, I know last time we talked about like what would a new incarnation of this look like, and I was wondering like, what if like there's all these like Soulsborne games that are coming out? Like, what would a Brutal Legend Soulsborne game look like?
Honestly,
I would be so down.
If it was made today, it might use similar like mechanics, I feel like. But yeah, it really would be, I'd say, kind of similar to Bloodborne in aesthetic, but like way more over the top.
Oh yeah, it'd be insane. Yeah, a little bit, maybe. Okay, so the vision I have for it would be super expensive, and it wouldn't ever like, but it would be a lot more realistic looking, and it would look more like an iced earth cover than anything else, like just really over the top and ridiculous, but with like a little bit more realistic fidelity to it. And then yeah, like just that basic. Get the studio that made what's it called? What was it? It was like they make the rip-off Soulsborne games. The like what's the dude that uses like the mech parts. What's it called?
Oh, Techromancer?
Not Techromancer. What is it called? Pillars of Eternity. No, not Pillars of Eternity. Souls.
Huh. I'm not sure. It was recent?
Yeah, it was like a couple of years ago. And they made like the very Dark Souls like before that.
Huh. Was it like a THQ game?
Maybe it's like a double A level, but I feel like they would knock it out of the park anyway. I'll try to find it later. But
no, yeah, I think if it was made today, I don't know how much would really change aesthetically, just because like if it is still done by Tim Schafer, he kind of has his artistic like hand on everything, and nothing's too realistic that he does. I feel like it's all kind of cartoony just to make it so that you're not like it's not too grounded, so they can go over the top when they need to.
Yeah, and technically I thought it was pretty sound, although I don't know if this is just a thing on the PC version, but like the audio sometimes is kind of wonky, like just like the mixing just kind of felt like really inorganic and like it kind of choppy. But I don't know if that's just a PC error or if that's just the sound design wasn't all there. But yeah, it was mainly in the dialogue, not really the sound effects, but like like you could audibly hear like the cut of like the recording sometimes, which was kind of odd.
I mean, it's probably just like a overall thing, but I don't think it was like a huge detriment.
Oh no, not at all. That's like me trying to find something to nitpick about. And The Surge is what I was thinking of. It's the studio that made that. They basically do Dark Souls games, but not quite as difficult and in different settings. And Lords of the Fallen was the other one. That's the high fantasy one that they did. So get them to do it, or just get From Software to do it somehow. That would be awesome. But yeah, this is one I definitely am going to spend more time in, just because the world is so unique, and I love the heavy metal culture, and I wish I was able to play it more. But yeah, what's your final thoughts on it?
So I mean, if you are into heavy metal culture at all, definitely give it a try. I think that'd be fair to say. And even if you're not, like, I'm not really into it. Like, I played Guitar Hero and Rock Band when I was a kid, and that's kind of how I know like so many metal songs as I do. And just like going through the soundtrack of this game, there were definitely times where I was like, oh, I actually love this song. I just want to drive to this song. Like I would drive to Motley Crue every single time.
Yeah.
I let it like trail off. I was like, no, go back to Kickstart My Heart. Like that's a really good fucking, let me just drive through this town.
Jam.
Yeah.
That's why I always like in like the Grand Theft Auto games, like on PC, you could make your own station basically, and I would make like, because like they would have like rock radio, but like it wasn't really that good. and like they were a lot better at like the hip hop stuff and country oddly, but yeah, I would always make like basically this game soundtrack just to have that like old thrash and classic rock feel to it. So
yeah, this game definitely like fills in a gap for people who I feel like don't really have something this targeted at them, you know, like from the music to just the aesthetic of it, and like the opening cinematic of him, like his name's Eddie, right?
Yeah, Eddie. The greatest roadie of all time.
Yeah, he's a roadie for like these kind of current modern, at least for the time, like metal bands, and it's kind of screamo-ish, like
like metalcore. It's metalcore. It's making fun of metal. Yeah.
And it was like, okay, this is clearly like they're making fun of them. All those people die like in the very beginning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fuck those people. And it really kind of like targets a certain audience that I don't think is really targeted in video games this perfectly. And it doesn't really like baby them. It's not like, oh yeah, you love metal, blah blah blah. You're a dude, bro. You respect women, blah blah blah.
Just go down the list.
Yeah, like just check off all the boxes of like things that people aren't targeting in video games. Awful people. No, this is just like people who are awesome and like just want something tailored to them.
Yeah, it's a celebration. It's not cynical or anything. It's like it's poking fun toward like new metalcore and like screamo bands, but like it's mainly celebrating the greats.
Yeah, it's definitely a celebration rather than like pandering to these people. And I think Tim Schafer really shines as a director here. Like you can see how this game would have failed if anyone else was in charge and wasn't as passionate as he was, I think.
Oh yeah, you have to have passion to work on a game like this. Like it's the entire central pillar is this love for heavy metal culture, and if you didn't have that, it would be pretty shallow. And yeah, it would probably look like you're pandering.
And I think like one final thing I want to talk about is like the fact that it's half action adventure, half strategy, which you don't really know going into it because the strategy stuff kind of comes out halfway through the game, I feel like. And it doesn't, so the action stuff is pretty simple, like, you know, your square triangle combos, blah blah blah, your
dodging, your some spell attacks, and
exactly. And then they kind of throw you into this strategy type gameplay, and it's kind of a weird interpretation of it because it's real-time strategy, so think like StarCraft and stuff like that, where you're commanding people, but you're an actual character in the game. You're still Eddie, or if you play like the multiplayer, you get to pick who you want to play as and like which army and stuff. And so you're still like this character in the game. You're just like flying around and kind of looking at who you want to command and say like, oh yeah, you go over there to do this, you go over there to do this, or you can, you know, go back down on the ground and fight with them and like help them clear out kind of lanes. So it's almost like a MOBA.
It's almost like, that's like, it's like a Smite kind of perspective. Well, you're flying above the battleground most of the time, but yeah, that's a really good comparison. Now I think about it. And like, I know it's received a lot of flack for it. Like some people don't like it at all, but I think it works. Like they managed to make a third person strategy game feel good
on a console too.
On a console,
like that's where I played on a PlayStation. And like, yeah, people are cynical about it and like, oh, this didn't really work, so let's knock off points. But like, I don't know. I think I enjoyed it for the time. Yeah, it was kind of difficult at times, and I was like, why am I doing this? I'd rather just, you know, fight this army by myself. But I kind of understood like what was going on. Like, okay, yeah, it's about him kind of becoming like the leader of this world or whatever, and, you know, controlling all these people who were enslaved, and like the, what's it called? Like the minions were all pretty indicative of like, you know, people who were like him and like metal and like were enslaved by these other types of people who there's types of metal.
The different units are like different like stereotypes, basically.
Yeah.
Like
like the headbangers or whatever.
Yeah, the
like
headbangers.
The thick-ass necks.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And like I think it needs to be, given another look at and like respected for all the risks it took, and nothing's really like come back and improved upon it. So I can't really say like, oh yeah, this is the worst of the bunch or anything. Like it really stands up by itself because no one's really attempted to do anything better. And I hope they do Brutal Legend 2 one day. I think with it getting like backwards compatibility and all that stuff, it might be looked at again in the future, but I don't know.
Yeah, I hope they can take another crack at it. I mean, they're finally doing Psychonauts, so how long of a time gap was that? So we don't have to wait at least over a decade. But
I mean, I don't know. I think Psychonauts was in like just publisher purgatory for a while. I think Brutal Legend, I don't know who Double Fine usually partners with, but this one was published by EA. I don't know how often they work with EA and stuff, but
imagine EA doing this now. Just you couldn't really. Yeah, they'd have to get somebody else. I bet. I want to say sell it to THQ, but lately I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's gonna come back until, I don't know, either they get it kickstarted or...
That's probably what would happen. It gets crowdfunded, yeah.
Maybe if it was like a console exclusive, that might be the only way it can get made.
An Xbox exclusive?
Yeah.
That would be pretty sweet. Better than nothing. I'd take it. Yeah, and with Psychonauts coming, if you want to just take a kind of a look back at the studio's history, definitely give this a go. I'd say you can get it for anywhere on pretty cheap, right? Like it's still up for digital on PlayStation.
I believe so.
It's definitely on Steam.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's on either on Games Pass or backwards compatible. I mean, probably both if it's on Games Pass. So, yeah, go ahead and give it a try. If you have an Xbox, you can buy it on Steam, pretty sure. PS3, if you somehow have that still working, go ahead and give it a try.
I guess it's not available digitally on PS3, but go into your local mom and pop shop and find it for $3.
Or, hey, DM me. I can send you my copy. I'm not playing it.
Bam. You got an offer. You have no excuse. Eli will literally give up his copy for you.
Exactly.
F.E.A.R. First Encounter Assault Recon is a 2005 first-person shooter with horror elements developed by Monolith Productions that currently sits at a solid 88 on Metacritic. It uses the prospect of scares to lure you in, but the real star here is the incredible enemy AI and truly visceral gunfights that take place in a variety of dark and dank locales that all manage to feel quite samey, but maybe the ceiling might start dripping blood at some point or something. This is probably, right off the bat, I was picking a game that I had never played before, but then I played a ton of it, and I'm absolutely enamored by it. Have you played it before?
I have not. I was always very terrified to play it. Every time I saw like a trailer on, I think at this point, G4 for either F.E.A.R 2, F.E.A.R 3, I was like, yeah, no thank you.
No thank you. It's really, that's the thing, it's deceptively not scary at all.
Okay.
It's very much like you'll be going through the environment and all of a sudden, oh shit, there's blood everywhere, and like the little girl on fire is around there somewhere. There's some like ghostly figure happening, but like it's kind of cheap and jump scary, and like that element kind of doesn't really represent the final product, because the final product is a really, really good, just mechanically driven shooter with like very Half-Life-esque design philosophy, where you're going through like these fairly linear levels but open to some experimentation, and you're just it's not a horror game, and I think many people that could play it and were turned off by that were turned astray, because it's really not about the horror elements at all. Like it's very much a backseat thing. So the fact that they marketed it so heavily on that to maybe try to set itself up as more unique, I don't know, it doesn't do the service, it doesn't do the final product justice, if that makes sense, because it's really all about the mechanics, which are absolutely stellar. So I have actually a pretty long list of notes. So just going back and playing this again, it made me realize how bad shooters were for a long time, like basically the entire last generation. after Call of Duty 4, which is like a great game, but like it started the whole genre down a really bad path of repetition. It's like where every game wanted to be that. And just like going back to a very like simple, like no aid down sights, just health pickups, you know, maze like level design, like all these things that were the norm for so long. Going back to that after a whole generation of just tight corridor linearity is really refreshing. It's it's like retroactively refreshing, and I wonder. I haven't played either 2 or 3. I imagine 3 is probably a little bit more cliched, probably following some tropes. But yeah, this first one feels just like such a pure experience that I just cannot recommend enough. So yeah, like I said, the scares really aren't the star. It's mainly the amazing mechanics. The gunplay is fantastic. There's a bullet time mechanic, which ends up to making the game exponentially more enjoyable, especially when you pair it with the shotgun. It has absolutely one of the best shotguns in any shooter ever. And just,
I was gonna say, I did see that like bullet time thing. Does that kind of help pretty dated shooting mechanics? I'm sure this game came out in 2005.
It feels fine. It doesn't feel quite as tight as like a Half-Life, which came out earlier, but yeah, you kind of end up falling back on it a lot of the time, but it's to its benefit, not its detriment. Like it still feels fine. Yeah, like especially because the main star of this is just the enemy AI is incredibly good. Still, like it makes most games today like seem pale in comparison. So imagine like Half-Life 1, like there's the marine enemies, but imagine if they were smart and actually used tactics and flanked you. They still, unfortunately, like call out their moves on the radio. They're like, throw a grenade. And they have that radio voice, the very just one-tone radio voice, which I love. But yeah, they'll flank you. They'll use grenades to blow you out of cover. They'll come in at different angles at you. It's like just this little change. If this wasn't the case, like the game would have been absolutely worse off. Like I don't think it would be anything special, but this makes it absolutely worth playing.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, so it makes every fight feel different. Like you're fighting pretty generic enemies, honestly. Like the main one is just like the stereotypical like enemy soldier. But because enemy soldier uses a bunch of different weapons and has tactics and moves around with the squad in cohesion, it makes you have to think about every encounter differently. And so instead of like a Half-Life where you have a bunch of different weapons, you're maxed out at 3, but with pistols you can dual wield them. You have basically like big like different automatic weapons, the shotgun, and then like some realistic ones like MP5s, and some like sci-fi, like there's one that shoots like basically like big spikes that you can just like cram into people and they'll stick to the walls. It's great.
Awesome.
Yeah. Especially when combined with bullet time, you just shoot them like in the chest and they get pinned to the wall and their ragdoll physics freak out. It's so good. So it's very much that Half-Life design philosophy in that regard, where you go around, you get like, I almost feel like Half-Life did horror better. Like it's a little bit more organic, where this just like cuts to scary thing and then cuts back and lets you go on your way. Whereas Half-Life more organically weaved that stuff in with the environment, and I think that's probably where it falls short the most. But the foundation that's there with the gameplay and just the environmental puzzles, and I can't stop comparing it to Half-Life because like it's almost there, but it's not quite. Like if it had a little bit more of that kind of manipulation of physics, I think it could be on that same level, honestly, because the enemy AI elevates it to such a higher level than it would have been beforehand. So yeah, there's the regular soldiers. There's one that gets introduced early on, is basically like your shield, because every game has to have the shield guy. And then there's these like cloaking ninja type enemies like Half-Life 1, and then turrets that are super annoying that you can either sneak by or just take out, either one. And something that a lot of games now, like visceral is kind of like a buzzword in the industry, but this game, like, it feels truly visceral, where fights, it's like there's like dust that pops up, there's like papers will like fly everywhere, the muzzle flash is like really obnoxious, so it's like every fight feels loud and just hot and dark all at the same time. And when you win, it's just like there's like a sigh of relief afterward, because the entire environment is just completely obliterated by the end. It feels like Yeah, like the best cinematic like gunfights that you can think of. It's like playing that.
Mm-hmm.
Very much Matrix feeling, almost.
What do you say?
I would say it has almost with the bullet time like a Matrix kind of feeling, which is like just an insane amount of bullets being fired at you, and like just the impact and like dust, and just it feels just nasty and dirty, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. It sounds almost like Wolfenstein, at least Wolfenstein.
Yeah.
Wolfenstein 2. That's the one that's freshest in my memory. Like where it does the gunplay does feel like, all right, I'm about to fight people. Like I really need to get ready for this.
Yeah, and yeah, I guess I love those Wolfenstein games. Like those are my favorite modern shooters, and this feels like at a foundational level very similar to that, which is great.
Okay.
With like the health system and the armor system, like you're picking up health packs, you're not healing automatically. You're you're buffing yourself up with the armor that you find around the environment. Very, very Wolfenstein. And yeah, Wolfenstein is very good at making all the guns feel like really loud and powerful, and this definitely starts that. So let me see. Yeah, muzzle flash, sparks, dust, paper flying. The paper flying thing was really cool because like it's a game from 2005. I don't even think Half-Life does that. And the gore physics, like when you shoot someone in the chest with a shotgun and they just explode for the first time, it's just like it's so satisfying. Like just slow motion down and then like just blowing a guy's leg off and he like flips around.
Jeez.
Yeah, so like it feels so satisfying still, like way more so than most games nowadays. And like it doesn't ever feel like gross. It feels ridiculous and slapstick. Like this game is not scary. Once again, but yeah. Then like I've just watched some videos just because I feel like this game has a really high skill cap. Like you can do some really crazy stuff. Like just mixing. You have like almost like a jump kick ability that you can chain together and kick people with. I'll link a video in the description of this guy playing. Or actually, I'll probably just put it up here. Of this guy playing at an extremely high level, and it's incredibly entertaining. You're like, this is. I feel like that video must have sold at least dozens of copies after the fact. Yeah.
So, would you say like, kind of you can, even though this was like a very like precursor to almost to modern shooters, like even before Call of Duty 4 and everything.
Yeah.
There's still like skill needed and stuff. You would think to make it like to play it on a higher level. You think?
Oh yeah, and I played on hard, which I think is the second to last difficulty, and it felt incredibly well balanced. Like I was surprised about how fair and also challenging it felt. Like there was like you can't just blaze your way through this game. Like you will get killed immediately. Like you have to think tactically, and it manages. So there's like a lean mechanic where you like look left to right. There's crouching. You don't fully aim down sights. You just kind of like pop it up a little bit so you get a little bit more accuracy. And then, yeah, like the melee moves, like you have these few mechanics that all worked really well together. And yeah, I don't know how they managed to balance it so well, especially because the AI is so good. It's like, when did they decide to, this is how accurate they should be. This is how many enemies should spawn at this area at one time. Like it feels like they just, every encounter was tested thoroughly to make sure that it was hard but fair. And that's the consistent throughout the whole time. Because
that's good.
Yeah, if it puts you up against a lot of enemies, it gives you a lot of weapons and ammo. But if you make a wrong turn, you will get blown to pieces like really quick. So yeah, that's why you want to get those armor packs. Then you also want to abuse the crap out of the bullet time. If you didn't have the bullet time, I think it'd be a different affair. I think it's necessary to how this game plays to have that. Like, you don't really rely on it. Like, if you waste it, like that's your fault. Like you're probably gonna get hurt, but it's also not overpowered.
So it's like a meter.
It's like a meter, yeah, and it recharges once it might recharge a little too fast, but honestly, it's one of my favorite mechanics in the game, and I'm kind of glad that it doesn't. You can just use it a lot, but yeah, it feels incredibly smooth from a balance and difficulty perspective.
Cool. How is like the story?
The story, it's trying to bite off a lot more than it can chew. Honestly, it's trying to be a lot more than it is. It's pretty basic. For the majority of the runtime, you're hunting down like this one guy, and then you're getting interrupted by all these psychological supernatural forces. So it's nothing really special. It's more about just like how moody the environment is, which excuse me, it's often really similar looking. Like you're going from these different buildings, but they're all kind of end up feeling the same, which is probably its biggest detriment. But yeah, it's trying to create an atmosphere and a mood rather than here's this great plot.
Yeah. Okay.
Which it mostly does. It does. Like, it feels pretty oppressive at times, and just in terms of like it's you versus this seemingly insurmountable force, but you somehow make it. And then there's also interjecting with these supernatural elements. So it's more about kind of satisfying its premise than telling a story, because I couldn't really tell you any of the characters' names or anything. Like, it was all pretty forgettable.
So you said it's not really like scary, like the horror stuff kind of is very much in the background.
Yeah. Well, it's actually it's so in your face that it doesn't work.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like it switches to where it's like it slows your movement down. It's like scary shit's happening now. You're supposed to, which I'm sure at the time probably would have been a lot more impactful, but today going back and playing it, definitely the weakest part of the experience for me.
Yeah, I think it's very much like a product of its time. This was probably before even Dead Space, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, so at this point, like, horror games kind of weren't where they are now, where they're like, they kind of figured out a formula after Dead Space, I think. But yeah, would you say it helps it at all?
It's
you think?
It makes it, I would say it makes it a little bit more unique, but also makes the tone confusing, because you have this, like, to bring it back to Wolfenstein, like, you have the ridiculous action, but you also have like these really tender and serious moments, and it doesn't quite get that second part right. Like, somehow Wolfenstein is able to stay cohesive with having these two very different opposite approaches to storytelling, and this, it feels like the horror is jammed in without much justification, at least early, at least for the majority of the runtime. There's some little bit more payoff at the end, where you find out a little bit more what's going on. But yeah, I feel like it's almost to its detriment, and I almost wish they focus more on what you're doing most of the time, which is just the exploration and the gunplay. And another thing about just older FPS design philosophy is the importance of downtime. And this game nails the importance of nails about the percentage of downtime. Like, there's a lot of periods where you're just navigating and you don't know, when's the jump scare going to happen, and just looting bodies and searching for ammo, and you get that lull, so you can appreciate the action later when it does happen, and it does get ramped up pretty heavily. Because a lot of games, they just nowadays, like, you're just action all the time. Like, it's just bombarding you, and it just all kind of feels samey and burns you out by the end. But this, it's like, all right, it comes in waves, and it's really good at spacing out its encounters. It's kind of a lost art nowadays with action games.
Yeah, I think you're right about like, after Call of Duty getting big, everything was more fast paced, and there's really no downtime in Call of Duty.
Yeah, there's not, like, and it's to its detriment. Except for, like, in the campaign, and like the moments where you're crawling around. Like, Call of Duty 4 is a great game on its own, but it spurred really poor design choices within the genre. Like, and you mentioned Dead Space, but I would think for horror, like, really leaving its mark would probably be Resident Evil 4, because that's what Dead Space's primary inspiration was. So, like, Resident Evil 4 was a good game on its own. It kind of led the whole genre to stray a little bit, and like, it got weird with like 5 and 6. But yeah, so it feels like one of the last ditch efforts to create a truly, like, pure classic, like, late 90s shooter experience, like, right before the the onslaught of Call of Duty clones happened. And it makes me wish that we veered more as an industry this way rather than that way for so long, because it felt like for years and years, like, that's all that happened. And like, nowadays we're trying to, we're coming around, we got like games like Titanfall 2 and the Wolfensteins, and so we're getting there. The genre is in better shape than it's been in a while, but this game just really makes me wish that it almost feels like we wasted a lot of time. Like, we could have been innovating more, but they were all wanting to chase that Call of Duty money. So
yeah, the PS3 era was pretty, I don't know, it was pretty weird for shooters. Like, everything was kind of being tested and then, like, being chased for previous successes and stuff.
Yeah, it was a lot of trend chasing for sure. And like we got some good examples out of like, you know, like Resistance, and like there's some good stuff that happened last generation, but like Vanquish, but that was more third person. But yeah, I don't know. It's just feels like it's the best part of the genre that you could. It's the best parts of the genre that have held up, stood the test of time, that I wish we've gotten more of. And if you do crave those older types of action games, definitely go play this. The PC version holds up really well. Like it's pretty comparable. I think I was able to run it at 2K pretty fine. So it's pretty easy on your system and just so solid. Like if the environments were a little bit better, cool. If the scares weren't quite as obnoxious sometimes, cool. But you just want those great mechanics and those systems, just please play this. And I'm gonna see if 2 and 3 hold up to the same standard. I guess 2 is pretty good, but 3 is kind of mixed. So I'm expecting a downward trend. But overall, like I am so glad I played this, and it's probably in my at least top 15 games I've played now.
Wow. Okay.
It's phenomenal.
2019. Would you suggest someone like go back? Do you think it's so like someone who is the normal modern shooter fan, how would you pitch this to them? Because it doesn't seem like it would play like Call of Duty, or like it's not as tight as something that people would play today. How would you kind of pitch it to someone like that?
Someone like that, it's hard because like there's a lot of people that are so conditioned to that new style, and like something like the downtime would be like a turn off to them, unfortunately. So first I would tell them to play Half-Life 2. And then, which came out a year before this. And then if they like that, I would probably say play this, because that has even more downtime. And so if they can get through that and enjoy it, then they should be able to get through this just fine. Just, yeah. And if anyone who was turned off by, you know, the potential scares before, like, don't even worry about it. Like, it's so inconsequential. So just, if you like this kind of very traditional, or not traditional, like late 90s Half-Life era shooters, like, then I would say absolutely give it a shot if you haven't, because I certainly wish I did sooner.
Do you think like fans of the Bethesda shooters now would be able to go back to this and, you know, love it for what it is?
I think so. And that's a big part to the AI. This game is worth seeing at the very least for that, because it is pretty remarkable sometimes. Like you learn how to adapt, and you know they call out their moves and stuff, but I think it's pretty revolutionary even still to this day. Like I haven't, it feels pretty unique because of it. Like I can't think of many modern games that have made me feel the same way that this game has because of its AI systems.
Shout out to Monolith and making those great AI systems.
No kidding. No kidding.
System? Come on.
Yeah, they're killing it.
These guys need to be watched.
Yeah, they're underrated, honestly. Like after playing this, like I like Shadow of Mordor. I'm now playing Shadow of War, and like I don't know how they do it sometimes. Like just so many interwoven systems going on at once, and like this is that boiled down to a very simple scale, but still quite an effective scale.
I'm sure in the sequels they kind of improve upon it more. Whether or not like the quality of the game overall goes down, like I'm sure they are improving on what made the original F.E.A.R kind of unique.
Yeah, if I do go back and play those two, I might do those later down the line on this show, but we'll see. I don't know. For now I was left so content with it. I'm just like I just want to talk about it, sing its praises, and wish I played it years and years and years ago.
Awesome. Any final thoughts?
Play it. I hope. I would love a like spiritual successor to this. I don't know who would do it, but like something, just like adding that bullet time mechanic and the physics of the ragdolls and the AI, like, and strip out the horror. So I would say more of a, maybe not cut and dry, but more honest execution. And more just simple execution. I think this could be easily done by an indie team, like what I have envisioned. Just very traditional shooter with bullet time and the lean mechanics and stuff. I think there's an incredible foundation here that hopefully is built up at least in the second one. But yeah, I think if you want a more pure FPS experience and like modern stuff isn't really clicking with you, give this a go, give it a run. You'll probably like it if, like me, you're find a lot of modern stuff lacking in what matters. So
awesome. Yeah, I'd love to see this brought back. That'd be interesting to see an indie team do it. I don't think there's a lot of good or like notable indie shooters, but I think they could definitely like turn this formula into something that an indie team could make.
Oh yeah, because I know like games nowadays are just like bigger, but scale back a little bit. Let's. There's value to tight linearity, especially when it comes to FPS games, like level design that is primary focused. And yeah, I just miss this type of game, and I wish we saw it more. Like we're gonna get a lot of good stuff this year, like Wolfenstein Youngbloods and Doom Eternal, but this just feels so right and so pure that I can't help but recommend it to as many people as possible.
All right, guys, you heard that. Play F.E.A.R.
Please play F.E.A.R, and I definitely want to play more Brutal Legend. Play Brutal Legend, and get ready for that Psychonauts 2.
Oh hell yeah! I'm gonna play Psychonauts 1 first, which I have not played. I think the VR one was free at one point.
Yeah, at some point, I don't know. Yeah, I have. That's another one that's just like sitting in my Steam library that I need to like fully go, and like it's at this point where like I know so much about it that like, do I really need to play it? But I probably should.
Yeah,
because it has a lot of charm to it. But yeah, Tim Schafer's good boy.
Shout out to Tim Schafer and shout out to Monolith Games. Like two game makers in this episode that are still doing great stuff today, and like you can definitely follow their lineage back and play even more like amazing games like F.E.A.R and Brutal Legend for sure.
Yeah. All right. What are we doing next time? Have you picked your game yet?
Ooh, let me pull up my list. Do you have one in mind?
I am gonna decide based on what you decide.
All right. You know, I'm gonna announce it. We're gonna go big. It's gonna be Star Wars: Empire at War.
Oh shit! Can we just talk about that for the entire time? I'm gonna talk about Republic at War. That's mine.
Perfect.
Bam.
Because I did not play that.
Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I'm just gonna say mods of great quality like that should be allowed. Because it feels like its own game. All right, well, it's going to be a Star Wars double feature next time on old games, old Empire at War and the mod Republic at War. So look forward to that. Thank you so much for listening. You can get this show on youtube.com/chiptoothgaming and the podcast service of your choice. We're literally on all of them apparently because Cheeks Jr. hooked us up big time.
We're on Spotify.
I'm so excited about that. So I know the momentum kind of died immediately, but we're going to get back into a more regular, bi-weekly release schedule. So yeah, play these amazing old games, and I would say these games are not old. These games are worth your time.